Hi, this is Dr. Pat looking at a system of two equations. So this time let's do a word problem. It's a typical kind of word problem that you might see in a lot of textbooks. It's looking at stock and that kind of thing. And so let's have fun with it. All right, now when you're doing a word problem, one of the things I want you to kind of get used to is kind of cheat and go to the end of the problem to figure out what the question's asking for. So that's important because when you go through a problem, you may be given lots of information and may not use it all. So knowing what you're looking for could help you to decide which information is good or bad. So I go to the end, and usually that's where the question is. And in this case, we're looking for how many shares of each stock. And then I can read through it, find out, oh yeah, we've got two stock or two companies we're playing with, Cisco and Nokia. And so I'm going to let C be the number of shares for Cisco and N be the number of shares for Nokia. I'm just using C and N so that way it's nice and easy for me to keep track of which one who's who. If I use X and Y, then I got to write down and figure out who's who and keep remembering all that stuff. So I like to use letters that make sense for us. Okay, and so then the next thing you want to do when doing a word problem is figure out what information is given. And so you're reading through the problem and then you start jotting down this thing. So I'm reading, okay, Cisco went from 20 to 2250. And so I just kind of write that down, just jot it down. Cisco 20 to 2250. And then I got Nokia 17 to 18. So I write that information down. And then Sabrina, she invested a total of 4450, and that's the beginning, and then ended up with 4950. So I got total 4550 and then ended up with 4950. And so that's one of the things I do after I've identified what I'm looking for. I actually go through and figure out what I need. The actual year 2003, I don't need in this case because we're only going from the beginning and ending of November. Now that I have my information, one of the things I also recommend is before going straight to the formula, which creates a lot of problems for students. It's one of those things I see on test. If a student's telling me, man, I hate word problems, I just can't get them. One of the things may be is that students will try to make too big of a jump, go straight from the words to the equation, to the formulas. And I'm saying just take transitions. It's about stages and things like that. So it's identifying who we're looking for. It's listing out the information. And also, the next thing I want to talk about is organization of the information. That really helps with making equations and stuff. And so one of the things I like doing with my word problems is I like to make a chart out of them, make a table out of them. Now, you might be wondering, why do I have Cisco, Nokia, and total at the top here? Is because those are the things we're looking for. Those are the variables, and also total. That's usually a dead giveaway for me. I'm not saying every single problem is going to have with a total is going to be there, but I'm just basically saying that it's a really key for me. Works most of the time, but not every single time. So this is what I'd try first, and if it doesn't work, then I'll try something else. Okay, and so then now that I've got this, I have on the side here what identifies my rows is the situation. We're looking at a before and after situation at the beginning of November and then at the end of November. So that's kind of my setup of this. Again, the top here is the listing of my variables and the total. Once I've got my chart kind of situated, now we just type the numbers in. So I've got Cisco, remember we started with 20 and then we ended up with 2250. For Nokia, we started with 17, ended up with 18, and then for our total, we had a total dollar amount of 44.50, and then we ended up with a dollar amount of 49.50. So that's what we're looking at. And so now we want to basically kind of see how could we make this table into some equations. And with this table, it's very, very straightforward and easy for us to do. So how do I transition to the equations? It's another stage here. Well, with this table and this setup so that totals on the far right, I know that these two things in some form or fashion are going to have to add up. It's Cisco plus Nokia equals my total amount. So what I do here is I put my variables in. So I put my variable C, again remember that's like my X, and then N, I'm using N instead of Y. And then what happens? We're going to add these two together. We're going to add the dollar amount for Cisco and the dollar amount for Nokia. Because remember, $20 times the number of shares gets me the total for Cisco. 17 times the number of shares for Nokia gets me the total for Nokia. And then total overall would be those two added together. So that's the main idea I'm using. And then I've got an equal sign for my total overall. And as you can see, I have now two great looking formulas right there. My equations ready to go, all nice and straightforward and easy to do when you organize your data. So if you're having a difficult time with word problems, just like the difficult time I have talking sometimes, just basically do some transitions, take some steps. Don't try to do everything all at once. Now the next thing I want to do is solve the system of equation. I'm going to use the elimination method just because I want to kind of make some connections to matrices that we'll use later on. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at there. I'm going to use the elimination method, and the first thing you want to do is figure out what variable, what letter I want to cancel. I decided, why not? Let's cancel the ends. So my next goal is, once I determine which letter, which variable I want to cancel, I have to set it up so that the coefficients, the number multiplying the n, have to be the same number but opposite sign. So to do that, I'm going to take the first equation multiplied by 18. Then let's take the second equation multiplied by negative 17. That would give me the number in front of n as the same number but different. One's negative, one's positive. And then remember, if we're going to do that first equation by 18, we do everybody straight across the board, and that second equation, everybody by negative 17. And when we do those two steps, this is the two equations that we now produce. And do look at what's happening here. We have a 306n. It's basically opposite signs, so that when we do add these two equations together, when we combine them together, we combine the c's together, the n's together, and then the numbers over here together, the totals. Basically what we're looking at here is a nice equation with only one variable left because we got 0 n here. The n is going to be eliminated. And so now we can solve for c. C is being multiplied by this negative 2250. We can just go ahead and divide both sides by negative 2250. So if you were worried about, oh my gosh, all these negatives, it came along, it just kind of all comes out of the wash that way. And so dividing both sides by a negative 2250 will cancel the negatives on the right hand side, and it actually end up with a nice positive value for the number of shares. So we have 180 for the number of shares for Cisco. We're not done yet, though. I know it's kind of like, ready to be done, but we're not because we only have Cisco. We have to go and figure out Nokia. So let's take this 180 and we'll go and pick one of the equations up here. I'm going to pick the first equation. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just avoiding that negative or that decimal there. But I want to pick that first equation and I'm going to plug in 180 for that C value. When we do that, that's what happens. And now I want to clean this up, solve for n. And so that's 20 times 180 is our 3600. And then let's subtract both sides by 3600. Then let's divide both sides by 17. And so now we got an n of 50. So I've got n equals 50 and c equals 180. But now remember, it's a word problem. So one of the things that you do is that think about your client. So you're in the real world and you're going to say to your client, yeah, n equals 50, c equals 180. Your client will be looking at you going, what? What are you talking about? So remember, take these nice mathematical symbols that we have here and let's just rewrite them in words so that way everybody can understand. We're talking 180 shares of Cisco and 50 shares of Nokia. Thanks. I hope this was helpful. Bye.